Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Marnie, and I'm here today with Jodie Randisi. She is one of our speakers at womenspeakers.com, and we are here. Oh, don't call me right there. That's so funny that I have that on the screen still. We were having some tech issues beforehand. Anyway, we're going to talk today about do the right thing, how to uncover, celebrate, and leave a legacy through the written word. And Jodie is the perfect one to talk to us about this. She has spent her career observing what it takes to connect and motivate, inspire human behavior. As a speaker, her unique ability to blend humor with serious issues touches and enlightens audiences. She's an author, coach, and indie publisher. She works with writers, providing editorial assessments, marketing assistance, and project management. And you can learn more about her at dotherightthing.com. Jodie, so welcome to you.
Oh, thank you, Marnie. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm excited. We've got a lot of ground to cover in this hour, but before we do, I want to just give you a big public kudos and thank you for assisting me with one of my projects. You brought so much talent and skill to the table, and I'm just so grateful for what you do to help writers actually publish the best that they can do. And that's kind of your heart, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I was honored to be invited into your world of communication, because I am very passionate about having the audience really receive what you're putting out there.
Yeah. So, which in the end is the goal. It isn't just to get it off your chest. It's to actually get it into the hearts of a reader, of someone who's going to be able to benefit from all that effort that you did.
Yes, that's correct. And I would say to your audience, our audience, that if you're listening to this, you probably already believe in the higher power of story and communication. Mm-hmm. And you already have a calling from the Lord that you are important. Your message is important. Your life experiences, your life lessons weren't for naught, that the Lord has a purpose in everything that we do. And if you can connect the dots and then share it, how pleased are you and how pleased is the Lord?
Amen. Amen. And I always just say, when you look at the Bible, it isn't written like a dictionary, or it isn't written like a list. It is written in story form, because that is how God created us to be able to comprehend the deep spiritual issues in life. And actually, all the deep things in life are communicated through story.
Absolutely. In fact, someone once said there are no societies that have, or there's been great societies that didn't use the wheel, but there are no societies that haven't used stories. Yep. And I would love to read something. Even the business world is shifting. So I got this article that says stories are about collaboration and connection. They transcend generations. They engage us through those emotions. And I know you had a speaker on before that went through all of this, but I think it's important to start there, that some people are afraid that you have to be a professional storyteller to share your message. And if that's true, then there are some significant things going unsaid. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. And all of us, from the time our babies were in our arms, have been telling stories. You know, it's not like this is a new skill to us. The difference is that it's new on camera, or it's new in written form to be a book or a blog or something. And so that's where it changes. But you're all storytellers. You always have shared the story of when Grandpa did this or whatever. I mean, we've been telling stories our whole lives. So that's awesome. So let's go ahead and dive in. What is the number one key to making it possible and probable for our listeners to get their message out in a way that can be preserved, published, produced, or even performed?
Well, let me start with a question. Has anybody ever asked you about your voice or your story or your message? Well, if the answer is yes, then your art. What is your art? Identify what it is, your uniqueness in the world that the Lord has planted in your heart and your mind and your experiences. That is your story. If it's important and someone has asked you about it, then it's a calling, I believe. And then the second question is, what's your territory? Is it that you should be a published author, or is it that you should be a letter writer, or is it that you should make a family scrapbook? So that's what I mean when I ask, what is your gift? What is your territory? My mission statement came from something my son said one time, and he was 8 years old in third grade. His teacher put on the board, "Somewhere out there is." And they were asked to fill in the blank. Well, my son, I don't think he knew he was being so prolific, but he wrote, somewhere out there is someone calling my name.
Wow.
So that is a heavy statement. And it became my philosophy and my foundation that every one of us have these divine appointments, these unique stories, and somewhere along the line, there is someone calling your name, and you are the only you there is. So nobody else can tell your story. In fact, why let anybody else tell your story? You know how stories can devolve or evolve and not be the truth. So I encourage everyone who has that experience and can answer those questions and want to preserve, produce, perform, publish your message to think about those two questions. What is your gift and what is your territory?
And these things can even morph or expand over time. My first book was Kitchen Shortcuts, Marnie's Kitchen Shortcuts. And it came based on people asking me, how do you do that? They were watching what I was doing with my life, and I was doing a ton of entertaining on a very tight budget with not very much time. And they kept saying, well, how are you doing this? You're just serving night after night, these big groups of people. How are you doing this? And so it became a book. That was the story I had to tell at that time, was how do you do that? Yesterday, we had lunch. I was with on a trip, and we had lunch with a gal that I'd never met before. And about 6 or 8 times in the conversation, she used the words, we're just here to flow through, to let life flow through us. And so later in the conversation, I said, recently I wrote a book that's called Flow Through Vessel. I wonder if you'd ever be interested in reading that. Talk about who you're here for. And it becomes clear to you when you're the person who's supposed to tell a story or share something, it becomes clear to you that this is part of the reason why you're here on earth. And that's what you're talking about. When you have this R and you have this tribe and they're out there, but you're not connecting with all of them yet.
That's right. I was in a season where every fall I went to what's called Snail's Pace Retreat for Women. It was a silent women's retreat, which, by the way, is kind of, oxymoron, because we women, we like to talk.
Chat.
But, the question there came up to the proprietors of the property and the ministry. How did this all happen? It's so wonderful, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, they wrote The Tale of the Snail. Right. And is it professional? Is it on Amazon? No, it is just a collection of personal anecdotes, stories, incidents, miracles that took place, or revelations that came to personal people with names. Are they famous? Not in the least. So yes, you're talking about when the question comes up and you feel the need to answer.
Right. And the difference is, and this is why I just love authors so much. I just spend a lot of my time saying, thank you, because it takes a lot of work to actually do that writing and to get it into a format that other people can digest it. But how amazing is it that now someone who's curious about the answer to that doesn't just get the 30-second rendition that they could actually have time to give you when they're having to dash off and do their other managerial tasks at the campground. But how awesome is it that you could take that home and you can sit with it and you can be amazed at what they have done and what God has done through that ministry, and even inspired. And that's what you do when you take the time to write something for other people to view. You're actually giving them this incredible gift. And yeah, they may have to pay you a few dollars to access it, but that's not really the purpose of the writing of it. The writing of it is to share what God has entrusted into your life that you could never otherwise share with as many people as would be able to read your book or watch your story in a movie form or in a theater or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah.
And excuse me, the reason we started this conversation was because it's my passion to help and to write and to make sure the message gets across. So it says on the screen, the 4 ingredients to preserve a legacy through writing. I'm just going to go into the passion with a little story. Do you remember when the highways and towns were dotted with Blockbuster video stores? Yeah. Well, they had a jingle and it went like, Blockbuster Video. Wow, what a difference it makes. Well, my little daughter at the time sat in the back seat, changed the lyrics to Blockbuster Video. What difference does it make?
Oh,
Which
funny.
made me think, well, what difference do I make in the world? You know, why am I here? What difference do I make? And so what would happen if I didn't share my passions? That's, I guess, the first ingredient to a legacy, is knowing that your passion is what makes you animated. It's what people are asking you about. It's the things and topics that you've always been passionate about. So that's clarified. And if you don't have a story to tell, what your passion is, for example, mine is coloring. I got into the craze because I was ministering in the prison with male convicted felons, by the way, and it seemed to fit my personality. That comes up next. But anyway, the class that they really related to was called Coloring Therapy for the Soul. And how did I know? I was just going in and spending an hour coloring with these guys, teaching them the techniques. And I got the testimonies back that it was life-changing. Wow. Marnie, I did not know coloring could be life-changing, but it was.
For guys? Yeah.
For guys in prison.
Right, felons? Yeah.
They're anxious for that quiet time. And I got so many great testimonies back from that. And that was just because I am passionate about coloring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what are the other three?
Well, the next one is the persona. And I think that's where all of your audience, probably, and mine too, we've already defined our values, our worldview, we know how we are different from the world. But have we defined our brand? Have we any information that can help us see how the world sees us? So I found a resource called How to Fascinate by Sally Hogshead. And I came up with the test, the assessment, knowing that I was an engaging, let's see, my fascination.com, it's howtofascinate.com. I found out that I am expressive, intuitive, and engaging. So therefore, I can use all that in my material. So that's my persona. I'm engaging. Sure. I'm, expressive. You can't keep me down. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and it's going to be funny mostly. So there are many personality tests to find out what your persona is, but you shouldn't stray from it. If you know who you are and how the world sees you, stick with that.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3.
And the next one is your philosophy. Of course, that is simply said like this. What is your bumper sticker? Mine, you know what it is. It's somewhere out there is someone calling my name. But let's see. People don't just stumble into our lives. We all know that. There's always a reason. So I examine that. But I tend to make my stories into divine appointments. So this is a very easy exercise for you if you don't know what your philosophy is. Ask yourself, have you ever had a revelation that if you didn't write about it or talk about it or share it with someone, that you would feel something significant would go unsaid? That's your philosophy. That's your bumper sticker. And if you can narrow it down to a bumper sticker, then you're able to be a clear communicator. So that's it.
That's cool.
And the last one, you're going to ask me about it, I know you are, is purpose. And I just need to clarify that our purpose has an outcome. That is the what. You mentioned it earlier. Is it a book? Is it a blog post? What is your purpose? So that has to be clarified. The second part of a purpose is the why. So we have to ask ourselves, am I here to teach? Am I here to inform? Am I here to cultivate potential? Am I here to motivate? Am I here for what reason am I here? The why and the what. So that's when our souls will light up with meaning, when we know our purpose. So that's what we put into our message.
That's so cool. The 4 Ps. Passion, persona, philosophy, and purpose. Love that. Love that. And the next thing, I'm grabbing my notebook here because you've got some exercises, and I'm going to have you just whip through these. And I know you guys really, you can go over to Jodie's website and get all of this more from her in detail at do-the-right-thing.com, do-the-right-thing.com. So let's go ahead with the 4 exercises.
Okay. So one of the exercises is pretend your book is published. How will you sign the book in your book signing? Think about those words being the icing on the cake. So the person has a book done, but the author has an entry into the heart of the reader. So, for example, when I sign my book, Total Pardon, which is a book about recovery and the Native American who was in prison when he found the true love of his life. It's an amazing story. I write, and I memorize this: may the grace and power and peace of Jesus Christ permeate your heart as you read these pages. And then I sign my name. So that's your exercise. Think about what your book signing signature would be.
I have to tell you, so I've got the COVID church book coming out this week. And so I'm excited. I hadn't really thought about it like that, as summing it up in that way. That's just beautiful. But mine is just really simple. It's the COVID church, before and after church BAC, growth, attendance growth idea. So, but mine is just simply bring them back.
Bring them back. Very good.
Just
simple.
Bring them back. Yeah. So whether yours is long or short, what it does is it forces you to get down to what is the core of heart to heart, looking in your eyes. What can I say to you quickly that will help you understand what this is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what I dream for you about this.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Get your heart connected to
Yes.
the audience immediately.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Number 2.
Well, I kind of went through them quickly, but I will say what fascinates your audience. See, fascination is different from just gaining the interest. So think about what your audience is fascinated by. So when an audience is fascinated, they are focused on you and not their to-do list. So that's an exercise you can do, or go to the howtofascinate.com and figure out how the world sees you. That's an easy exercise to do. So
the second one is to figure out how to fascinate.
Yes.
And is that mostly just coming up with, like, you had the words, that your 3 words?
Oh.
Is that mostly what that is, or what do you mean by it?
It's very quick, 21 or 23 questions, and then you get a large report about what is your archetype, what would be your slogan or your 3 words. Yeah. So I have mine over here somewhere in all the stuff. Oh, I am the rock star.
Wow. Okay. And that's over at howtofascinate.com.
Yes, ma'am.
I love that. Okay. What's number 3 exercise?
Okay. So if you're in the business world, you've probably heard SWOT.
Yes. Yep.
Right. Exactly. So I would suggest for authors and writers to SWOT your life.
Okay, just a second. Just for those of you who don't know, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, SWOT.
So figure out your strengths in your life, figure out your strengths in your legacy, figure out your strengths in your writing life. So the first 2 might collide, but it's very important to think about all those things you just mentioned: the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats in your life, your legacy, and your writing life.
Beautiful. And what's number 4?
Well, I think I went right through it. Let's see. I don't have it in my notes. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
I love that.
When I have a speech or a presentation, or even if it's in a little 4 to 6 minute or 5 to 7 minute speech at Toastmasters, I give all my stories a title. So I suggest your exercise would be to take an index card and write the stories. Think of all the stories you love to tell quickly and give it a title. And then when you're done, every story has a point you can make. You can attach a point or a message to a story. That way you're giving yourself a story for a chapter to make a point or whatever.
And I'm going to just take that for speakers who are listening. I'm going to take that a step farther and say to make a PowerPoint image for every story with your title on it. And now as you're going through your presentations, when the next slide comes up, you actually know where you're going next. You know the whole story, but all they have is either the teaser line or the title to that whole next segment of what you're going to talk about for the next 3 to 5 minutes. So yeah, beautiful.
Again, you're connecting your audience with your message visually.
Exactly.
And yourself with what your point is, so you don't ramble like I'm doing now.
No, if you open up your heart to the deeper story behind that story to you is maybe just a 2-minute story that you always tell. But like you said, there's so much behind that. There's probably a moral in the story. There's possibly a whole scripture passage that would go with it. There's potentially 3 points that you could provide to someone who's struggling. Yeah, I mean, you can make this whole story into something, either a blog or a whole article or a whole book or, a whole weekend seminar. Who knows? God can really use us. So I love that, to just actually honor your stories.
And here's a tip.
The first draft doesn't have to be perfect. What's the rest? I can't read the rest. Read the rest for us.
It just has to be written.
Write it down.
Right. So have you a story in your heart and your mind? Write it down. Don't worry about editing yet. Just get it out. And like you said, attach a scripture, attach an image.
Well, and you don't have to, but just giving it a title. I think the key is to honor the story. Because otherwise the story just gets lost. You forget it. It just, life goes by. It's like quotes from your children. If you don't write them down, they're gone. They're hilarious, but you can't remember them a year later.
Right. Some of them I put on a sweatshirt.
Absolutely. Love it. Yeah,
which is one way to preserve Ben's legacy. I don't know if he'll wear it, but I have a sweatshirt that says somewhere out there is some, anyway, and a picture of his puppy dog.
Nice. Okay. What are 4 creative ways to communicate your legacy other than writing a book?
Well, we have many ways. I've showed you a self-published book, Tale of the Snail, which is Snail's Pace Retreat. One of the ways I have enjoyed seeing someone else's legacy was a guest book. Have you seen those crazy animals, the butler dog at the front of the door with a guest book such as that in front of, and then you sign it and you say, oh, the meal was delicious. So all those memories, funny things we said, funny movies we watched, all that is legacy being captured. You're capturing the family's essence in a guest book. One thing I did was I was upset about chain letters, like they're bad. And then I changed my perspective and I sent all 4 of my kids a chain letter that started, it's called Love Storm. And what I did was I proposed, add something to the chain letter that would make us laugh or cry. And so each kid submitted something. One of the kids has a food fight list. So it's a regular food list: bread, pudding, Pepperidge Farm, that's our brand, salmon. These are my husband's list. And then all of a sudden, Emily writes dog treats for Robin. Well, we have to laugh. Chocolate anything, she writes. Good food for lunch. And then knock Robin out before you get home. Robin's face. So obviously they were in their fighting stage. They've since made up. And so what I did was, while she's an adult, I didn't want her to leave with the food fight list. I, of course, used a software program called Comic Life. And Comic Life is a way to make a graphic novel, insert your photos, and make a graphic novel of all your funny memories. And by the way, are we not all going through our Facebook memories going, wow, I forgot about that photo. Well, if you take the time to do something like a graphic novel in Comic Life, it's a program you can buy, and you put in the picture of grandma and grandpa, you don't have to run through all your photographs later on in life at the funeral. You have this booklet, or in my case, something I did at Staples called Love Storm. Everybody got a copy. And that's our chain letter. And you'll see the progression of everybody's sense of humor, you capture moments. So there's lots of ways to do it other than publishing a book. I'm sure you're aware of, let's see, what are some things on my list? Let's see, collections. I heard somebody just said, oh, I'm really into paperweights. Well, there's a story of where that grandpa bought that paperweight. Why was it special? So those kinds of collections can be narrated. They don't have to be published, but you can solidify a legacy by capturing grandma and grandpa in their moments on a videotape. There's all kinds of ways. So don't be intimidated if you're not ready to publish.
Yeah. So one of the things you were talking about the guest book. So years ago, I wrote a book called Minute Memoirs, and it's still available at Amazon. And it is a little guest book that you can put either by the front door or in the bathroom. I love to put it in the bathroom with a pen. And then as guests are there, they just find one of the many hundreds of questions in there that they want to answer. And they're divided out by, high school year days or automobiles or different things. But you really get the personalities of the people coming through. Some of them are hilarious. Others are they write as small as they possibly can, and they write thousands of letters or characters in there, and other people like scroll one word. It's just really, really fun. And you find out who they are, what date they wrote it. And so just any which way you can, just be creative about how you're finding ways, but go ahead and capture, again, honor the stories that God is flowing through your life. So what are 3 kinds of editing that you must include in your plan?
Oh, big topic, but very important. The first one is that developmental editing. And most people would feel offended if someone got involved in their words, but they shouldn't.
Right.
Another eye, excuse me, that's not your own, is a tool that is most needed. So
takes it to a whole different level. Honestly, it is. When I get my edits back, I am just like wowed by God. Look at what you did with the simple thing that I started with, and people can really, really make it so much better.
Right. So the content or the developmental editor is looking at the overall structure, the flow, the content that's missing, the hiccups, and all of that. So that's what a content editor is to do for you, I wouldn't suggest doing it with a close friend, or I really suggest doing it from somebody who is apart from your world so that you can get that obvious extra view.
And Jodie, is this like your favorite part to do, the content editing?
It is. I miss the typos. For example, I would always hire a proofreader myself.
Right.
Yes.
It's very different. There's several ways to look at a book, and you need different kinds of eyes looking at it to catch them all. Okay, so developmental or content.
And then, of course, is the line editor. This is where I'm not sure how to use a comma. I don't know if I should use an exclamation point, which, by the way, don't. They say for 90,000 words, you might have one exclamation point. So it's a no-no. You're supposed to show and not tell, but that's another thing. But the line editor is reworking those awkward sentences for you, adding the correct punctuation and so forth, and the syntax. If the words work better a different way, that person is switching the actual words so that the reader is not left confused.
Right. And the final?
And the last one is those typos that I was speaking of. Yes. So I have a way to do that if you're on a budget. Are you ready for this?
We're ready.
It's called a typo party. And so you invite your tribe, your friends, or your people, and you just ask them, have you any interest in helping me solidify and polish my work? Have you ever done this before? Can you get it back to me in a certain time? And everybody submits, maybe you can, a little bit or a lot, maybe not the whole manuscript, but you'll get a feel for where you are making your mistakes. And it's called a typo party. So that's a way to do it if you're on a budget.
I love that. And the other thing is, we always say in marketing, we always say that people want to be in that special group that gets the advance notification. Like, who did you tell first that you were pregnant? Was I one of those people? Who did you tell first that you were writing a book? Who did you include in the process of that? It's a very special privilege and a place that people long to have. So don't be afraid of doing that. And don't be worried at all that they're going to find them. You're telling them, I'm sure I've got some in there. Help me find them.
Right, exactly.
It's awesome. It takes the pressure off. So 7 tips very quickly for self-editing.
Yes, of course. There's lots of websites and books you can read, but you need to brush up on your own grammar before you hand anything over to anyone. So read a book and then pay attention. Notice the dialogue tags in a novel that you're reading. People get that confused. They'll put 2 people in the same paragraph. That's a no-no. But these things can actually be easily observed if you're paying attention while you're reading a book. that has been published. The commas, the ellipses, the apostrophes, again, that is just something you need to brush up on and get the information from the real English teachers. Capitalization, it's simple stuff, but there's so many things out there, grammarnet.com or whatever you need to do. I copy and paste and put it in there all the time. So there are easy ways to brush up on your grammar. But the one that I really want to emphasize is number 2 is the show, don't tell. In fact, I have a piece here. I did a writing workshop at my library, and I asked people I told them I was the Tall Tales winner in my state of South Carolina. I'm the champion liar, by the way, which they love at prison. I got a lot of street cred. But so I asked the group to write a sample tall tale that they came up with. And the rewriting that I would suggest on this man's essay, it was substantial because of the show, don't tell. He is listing all the characters up front and doing way too much backstory, and it lost me quickly. So we don't want to do that. The run-on sentences he had, we want to keep it simple. The other thing, number 3, would be the head popping. We can't change our point of view, even though we're tempted to express what the other character is saying. If you're going to be omniscient, you're going to be omniscient for everyone. If you're going to do it in first person, which is the most popular, by the way, or third person, right up front, present. But you got to keep that head straight, the reader's head straight. Now, number 4 would be your first chapter. Sometimes the first chapter, Marnie, is the most difficult, and you might end up writing it last after you have expelled everything in your mind on paper. The first chapter has to be the hook. So we have to not, again, put all the characters up in the front. The reader really doesn't care until the character does something. So we have to make them do something, and only one character at a time. We don't mention things that we're not going to follow up on in the first chapter, and we just really need that hook. That's pretty good, right?
It is. I had to just stop you there. The first book I wrote was published by St. Martin's Press in New York City. And I had the whole big book written. It'd take me 2 years to write it. They accepted it. I got all the editing done. Everything's ready to go. We're ready to go on vacation. They've got their job to do for the next several weeks and without me. And I get this email and it says, we just need you to write a first chapter. And I was like, what? How do you do that? I just already said everything I had to say. And I really just prayed about it. I mean, I went and got really quiet and I'm like, God, I don't have anything more to say on this topic. And they want a first chapter. And so I just let God help me write it. And it came back. I was able to get it done before we left on vacation. And then the email came back after we got back. She sent an email and she said, your writing skills have improved so much since you started on this project. That was the best chapter. Sure. And so don't be intimidated by this. Anything your editor asks you to do, or like all of these, it seems overwhelming when you hear it all at once, but it's okay. God's got you and he's going to help you. But you're right about sometimes the best time to write the first chapter is when you're all done with the whole project. Okay. What is number 5?
Yeah, you're leading me right into number 6 because it's getting feedback. Okay. It's getting feedback. And I don't recommend really sending the full manuscript to random strangers. Right. Maybe you're afraid of theft, but that's really the case. But it's really not enough to get specific feedback. So this first thing I suggest is to send 2 or 3 chapters to, if you're hiring a professional editor, and look at how they respond back and whether you agree, whether they've changed your voice or not, or whether they get you. So it's okay to be upset if you see a lot of red marks, but because it's your baby, but you have to take that step back and just say, well, yes, I'm okay now. And ask for a repeat if it doesn't seem appropriate. So that's what you do with your beta readers. And I do have a pitfall right here to insert. I published my first fictional novel that I've been working on forever. And it finally came to my heart that this needs to get out there, one of those moments. And I put out on Amazon a version for my beta readers to get blurbs. I contacted the influencers in the area of kindness, which I got some back. And then my intention was to republish it without the typos that the beta readers would find and include those blurbs. But now history has shown me that Amazon has 2 versions of my same book. So the person that edited my book bought the wrong version. She wanted to see if I used her edits. And she contacted me and said, Jodie, what happened? All those edits I did for you. And I went, oh, I don't know how to work with Amazon to delete that bad copy, but there is now the new copy.
Yeah, I do caution you too. This is wonderful that this came up. Keep it behind the scenes until you're ready to publish it. And of course, you can do updates to your book, which is one of the most beautiful things about living in 2020 is that you can actually update it later, but you don't want to be putting it out there until you're really ready, because whether or not you can change get rid of that other one, if you had gotten bad comments on that, you can't get rid of those. So, there's a couple good reasons to wait until you're ready to go. Awesome. Yeah. And number 7.
Choosing an editor. Good editors always are busy, first of all, and they're not cheap. If they're cheap and hungry, well, that would be, some cases, but not in general. I'm speaking to an audience that has a budget and really has something to be polished. Be prepared to have your budget set aside, and don't fudge on that, because it's an important thing. And again, there are 3 types of editors. So be asking for samples of their editing, maybe the books that they have edit. They will mail you an entire book sometimes. Make sure that you include maybe an error and see if they catch it. Maybe.
Yeah. And it's important that you choose an editor that is going to resonate with you personally too. You don't want to have somebody that's just grading on your personality. You want to choose someone who you can actually work with. Editing a book is a big deal. It's a process. It takes time, and you want to be able to trust this person and also have them really honor what you've done. So you're looking for someone who kind of has a conversation with you and shows you some of their work and how they work, and you feel like, yes, this is the right person for me.
It has to be a match.
Yeah. So what are 3 mistakes that first-time authors make? We could have probably 100 mistakes, but what are the 3 that you want to point out?
Well, as you said, producing a book and publishing is difficult.
Too soon, yeah.
And it takes a while. So cutting corners and, in fact, rearranging the fonts or the chapters to fit the number of pages. And that is rearranging your work so that it fits your formatting. And that's the number 1 mistake. Do not format until you have written your entire manuscript and it has been edited in Microsoft Word.
Yeah. Can I just point in, if you're having someone format it for you, they have to have a final draft. They cannot work and reformat. Well, it's going to be expensive. Let's just say that way. If you're going to do that, you're going to pay so much money to have it reformatted. So just have your final draft ready before it goes to format.
Yeah. And so I suggest using Canva. They have ebook, templates, or a dazing. It's spelled just like amazing, but a dazing. That guy has professional templates. I also use a software called Vellum, and there's all kinds of ways to put a Word document and have someone else format it into the template that you were envisioning, rather than you trying to create what you want to see in the finished product. That's just not the way to do it. It takes a lot of time to undo all that formatting.
And just so you know, that what she's talking about, the 3 URLs that you just mentioned, those are for when you're going to produce an ebook that you're going to sell or give away at your own site. That's not for when you're producing an ebook that's going to go onto Amazon. That's a whole different formatting process.
Well, actually, Vellum does that. It took it took my Word document and turned it into the style that I wanted, and then it produced my ebook for my novel. So actually, Vellum is a cost-effective way to do that rather than paying.
Is it EM at the end or UM?
UM, VELLUM.
.com.
Yes, a great resource.
Awesome, fantastic. Okay, second mistake.
Second mistake is writing for producing a product or a book for the wrong reason. Generally, people find that writing is therapeutic, but unless you have a universal, unique message attached to your experience, sometimes it comes off differently than you intended. And so that's a mistake that sometimes people will write. And if you want to see your name in writing, or that's your ego, that's part of that. Don't write for the wrong reasons. And lastly, I know you're going to ask me about this, right?
Yep.
Last one. Okay. Number 3 is the lack of preparation. It's not researching your readers, not understanding your intended demographic. You can't write for everyone. That's just a myth. If you think my book can be read and absorbed by everyone, you're mistaken. There are a few books like that, the Bible for one, and some good ones, but I'm generally speaking for the self-published author. If there's no budget or you have no plan to set aside your time for writing, you have experienced a lack of preparation that will cause you frustration in the end.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's really great advice. And we've been talking about it all hour, actually. Who are you? Who are you for? And what are you going to say? How you're going to say it? So what are 3 excellent reasons to get published?
Very good. This is a great ending to this session. And thank you for asking. Your legacy, as we've discussed, is worth preserving. And if it's not you, who will do it? I have I have a artwork from one of the inmates in my coloring class. Well, they can't use scissors, so he's tearing little pieces of craft tape and to create that beautiful artwork. And then he writes a poem. I'm a broken treasure. Can you take me back together? Can you see my lines? They're precious and divine. So my head just exploded. He has a legacy to preserve. He discovered that he was a poet. So your legacy is worth preserving. So number 2, becoming a published author. This is an excellent reason to become a published author. Credibility. If you're a business owner, or if you're a minister, if you're a community leader, your credibility goes through the roof when you say, here, would you like a copy of my book? And the last thing we need to all remember is, and if you have to write this down and look at it in the mirror every day, you can change the world. You can change hearts. You can change your minds. And that is because God has a calling on all of us. Christians have a duty, and I think, I don't know how else to put it, a calling, to preserve whatever legacy you've experienced thus far in your life. Don't let anybody else do it. You do it.
Well, and actually nobody else can do it the way you would do it.
That's right.
You're it. If you don't do it, it will not happen. Somebody else could make a picture of a sun like that guy did, but they couldn't do it the way he did it.
That's right. Those words came from his heart. And now what I do is I use that to encourage people to become prison volunteers. There are broken people back there with talent. And
And was he even thinking about that when he was doing that? He had no idea.
None whatsoever.
How his gift to the world would be used to inspire others to go serve other people. And that's our heart for you guys. Do not hide your talents. Do not hide your legacy. Do not hide who you are. You are so precious in God's sight. You're precious in our sight. And we just encourage you to go and tell your story, get it out there, do what God puts in your heart to do. If you need help with the writing project, reach out to Jodie. She's amazing. She's awesome to work with. Do the right thing. And also she's a speaker available over at womenspeakers.com if you have a writing conference that you need a speaker for, or even she has awesome stories to tell, and she will tell you which ones are tall tales and which ones are truth, so you can distinguish. And bring her in for your women's conferences and your women's ministry events.
Thank you, Marnie. That was a great.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, always.
You guys have a wonderful rest.